The irony of the letter: fake hope, democratic gatekeeping. And the injured worker, they would not hear the irony of this whole thing, is that I may not have really needed a lawmaker letter for my son. I thought it would have been nice to have. I thought it might help show that my son had a future in Washington state, that if he received the work permit and papers we were seeking, he could one day contribute here with his AA degree, his future BA, his engineering path, and his work ethic. But in truth, a letter from Representative Julio Cortez, Senator Bob Hasegawa, or any other state lawmaker probably had little or no formal legal weight in an immigration case. The gesture would have mattered more than the legal force. That is the point. When lawmakers claim to care about immigrant families, working families, DACA kids, injured workers, students, and the future of Washington, sometimes the smallest act of human recognition matters. Sometimes a letter does not win a case, but it tells a young person, "We see you. We believe you belong. We want you to build your life here." So when my complaint was narrowed down as though this was only about one letter or only about one request or only about whether one lawmaker did or did not help my son, that missed the deeper truth. This was never just about a letter. It was about what Democratic lawmakers choose to recognize and what they choose to ignore. It was about who gets symbolic support, who gets speeches, who gets slogans, and who gets silence. And that brings me to Senator Bob Hasegawa. If Senator Hasegawa wrote or promoted a support letter in another young person's DACA-related case, I do not blame that young person. I do not blame any immigrant kid or family for accepting whatever help they could get. Families are desperate. People reach for hope wherever it appears. But I do question the adults in power, because if a lawmaker knows that such a letter has little or no legal force, then what exactly is being sold to families? Hope? Access? Political theater? A photo op version of compassion? That is not a small thing. That is dangerous. Because immigrant families already live inside a system built on fear, delay, bars, waivers, consular processing, family separation, and false promises. They do not need fake hope. They need federal repair. They need amnesty. They need legalization. They need family unity. They need repeal and repair the 1996 immigration laws that helped create so much of this cruelty. They need lawmakers who will stop chanting defund IC at the gates after the harm is done, while refusing to put amnesty and statutory repair on the table before families are broken. That is what I've been asking. Where's our amnesty? Where's our repair? Where's the courage to say the federal law itself must change? And the same pattern exists for injured workers. For more than 10 years, I have asked Democrats, progressives, labor-adjacent spaces, Medicare for all supporters, whole Washington supporters, Bernie people, and pro-worker politicians to put basic federal injured worker rights on the table. Not slogans, not vibes, not health care as a human right, while work injuries are quietly shifted away from employer responsibility. I mean real federal injured worker protections, a modern National Workers' Compensation Commission, federal minimum workers' compensation standards, accountability for IME and denial doctors, protection against cost-shifting work injuries into SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, VA care, private insurance, family poverty, homelessness, and suicide, protection against systems where state doctors and state-paid medical gatekeepers can help strip benefits while injured workers are treated as disposable, protection against a grand bargain that becomes a grand betrayal. This is not new information. My side was educated. They were told. I told them. Others saw it too. Even people from the Bernie and Medicare for All world acknowledged that I was raising a real issue. Some would say, Darren is correct, but then pivot back to saying Medicare for All would solve it. No, Medicare for All does not automatically solve workers' compensation. Whole Washington does not automatically solve workers' compensation. Universal care without injured worker protections can become a cost shift. It can let employers, insurers, and state systems escape responsibility, while the public pays for damage caused at work. Free care without injured worker rights is not justice. It is a trap. And yet for years, my own side, the side that claims to care about workers, immigrants, mental health, disability, and human rights, shamed me, shunned me, redirected me, and treated me like the crazy man who would not shut up. But here is another irony. Mental health professionals told me to sing out, write out, create, and use music instead of raging at lawmakers. So that is what I did. I sang. I wrote. I made videos. I used peaceful speech. I used art. I used public records. I used my pain to try to warn people. And then the very people who claimed to care about mental health acted like my mental health made my message easier to dismiss. They did not want to hear the content. They wanted to judge the messenger. For 10 years, I have been trying to talk about the injured workers who lose their bodies, benefits, homes, families, dignity, and sometimes their lives. I have been trying to talk about the people pushed into SSDI, VA systems, private insurance, homelessness, and despair. I have been trying to talk about the suicides and the slow deaths that come when systems deny, delay, minimize, and abandon people. Where were the Democrats? Where were the progressives? Where were the pro-labor voices? Where were the lawyers? Where were the human rights people? Where were the mental health champions when injured workers were being mentally broken by systems that already knew what they were doing? Instead, we got more slogans, more campaigns, more Medicare for all, more Ho Washington, more defund IC, more incrementalism sold as courage, more Republican-like politics dressed up as compassion, more speeches about immigrant parents and worker roots, while immigrant families and injured workers were left without the federal remedies we actually needed. So I am asking plainly, Senator Hasegawa, where's our amnesty? Representative Cortez, where's our amnesty? Where are the federal injured worker human rights? Where is the call for a modern National Workers' Compensation Commission? Where are the federal minimum standards? Where is the accountability for denial doctors and state medical gatekeepers? Where is the protection against cost-shifting work injuries into public systems and family poverty? Where is the courage to say injured workers are not disposable? Where is the courage to say immigrant families need legalization, not just symbolic letters? Do not tell me you care about immigrants while avoiding amnesty. Do not tell me you care about workers while avoiding federal injured worker rights. Do not tell me you care about mental health while dismissing the man who was told to sing instead of rage. Do not tell me you care about justice while narrowing complaint, narrowing the record, narrowing the harm, and narrowing the human being in front of you. This is why I call on American state lawmakers, especially Democratic ones, who put Medicare for all, whole Washington, campaign branding, and safe slogans ahead of amnesty and basic federal human rights for injured workers. This is why I call foul on a revolution that says labor, but will not put labor's federal human rights on the table. This is why I call foul on movements that use immigrant families, injured workers, disabled people, and working class pain as moral currency, but go quiet when we ask for the actual law to change. The boss attacks us from the right. The gatekeeper redirects us from the left. The injured worker gets buried in the middle. The immigrant family gets a chant instead of amnesty. The disabled worker gets health care, while the employer gets escape. The mentally injured advocate gets called unstable after doing exactly what he was told to do. Write, sing, document, and speak peacefully. So yes, I know the irony. I may not have needed the letter, but the refusal, the narrowing, the fake hope, and the silence revealed something bigger. It revealed who gets heard. It revealed who gets managed. It revealed who gets used. It revealed who gets buried. And after 10 years, I am still asking the same question. Where are our basic federal human rights? For immigrant families, for injured workers, for disabled workers, for the people America praises in speeches and abandons in systems. I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking for the truth to be placed on the table. And if the Democratic Party, the progressive left, the single-payer movement, labor-adjacent spaces, and state lawmakers cannot put amnesty and injured worker federal human rights on that table, then they do not get to call this justice. They do not get to call it a revolution. They do not get to call it pro-worker. They do not get to call it pro-immigrant. They get called what it is, rot, and we call foul.